Thank you very much, Chairman of the Season's Proceedings, my former parliamentary colleague and still my parliamentary colleague and member of the cabinet, which is Paula Gopi-Schoon, Party Chairman Mr. Franklin Khan, currently holding the portfolio of Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, Member of Parliament for Point Fortin, Major General, retired Edmund Dillon, party officers, PNM candidates, members of the community of Point Fortin, visitors. Once again, I'm very pleased to be here with you in Point Fortin, enjoying your hospitality, and I'm very pleased to see so many of you under the shop, waiting at the end of the street, and I get the feeling that it's 2015 all over again. Because clearly, insofar as November 28th, local government election day is concerned, it appears to me tonight that Point Fortin is not only red, but you're getting ready to be red and ready. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just about concluding the celebrations of our 60th anniversary as a political party in Trinidad and Tobago. And this year we have been celebrating for the entire year with a series of events. And as I do that and mention it to you, permit me here this evening to recognize two of our stalwarts. Sitting at the front here, Mr. Cyril Rogers, former representative for Point Fortin. And behind there, somewhere in the middle, I could see my fellow parliamentary colleague, the one and only Hedwige Barrow. He's a man who was a fighter, but a decent fighter. He never fought in his jacket. He had to take his jacket off first once the fight starts. Once he's representing Point Fortin, he wasn't afraid of a fight. But that's representation sorry. But that's the kind of representation that you get from the PNM in these parts. Cyril Rogers and Hedwige Barrow, two of our stalwarts recognized in this our 60th year. And I mention that to let you know that change is always available. And change ought to bring progress. And on this occasion, as you heard Mr. Franklin Khan outline to you, what is being held out to you, the people of Point Fortin and the people of Trinidad at this time, is change for progress, change for the better. I don't know how many of you know the term warden. And if you're familiar with our maps and our old maps, you would see that our country at one time was administered in sections called wards. And as a Tobagoan, I'm very familiar with that because Tobago used to be a ward of Trinidad and there was a guy in charge of Tobago called the warden. Maybe you don't know that here in Point Fortin, but the warden was the man who was in charge at the local level. Even though Trinidad and Tobago was one colony, one territory, but Tobago's local administration was done by the warden. He had the responsibility largely for collecting taxes and for dispensing what little the government gave to the people of Tobago at that time. So the warden was a big man, but he was the man in charge, because you need to have somebody in charge. And you know, so important was the warden in the system of administration that when King George died in England, the warden in Tobago was a fellow called Mr. Meaden. And when the news came to Tobago that the king had died, one farmer shouted to another farmer that the king had died in England. And the other farmer asked, well, who will reign now? And Mr. Meaden was so close in authority and administration in the eyes of Tobagonian. That the farmer replied, Mr. Meaden now? If King died in England, it had to be Mr. Meaden? So that was administration. But the system changed later on from operation under a warden to the county council. So the island was divided up into smaller sections to bring governance nearer to people. And a similar kind of thing would have happened in Trinidad, where we had, Mr. Card mentioned, you had the St. George and St. Patrick and St. David. And then later on, as you move towards bringing government closer to the people and more effectively for the people, we had the creation of the municipal corporations. And now we are saying to you, using that template, we are bringing into that system the whole question of increased responsibility, increased autonomy, and all of this has a purpose. All of it has a purpose, and the purpose is very simple. It has to do with an attempt to improve the quality of life. And if you see it that way, you will realize why you should embrace in 2016 going ahead what is being offered as part of the continued evolution from the warden to the county council to the municipal corporation with limited autonomy to a greater aspect of autonomy in local government going forward into 2017, 18, and so on. Because you see, let's look at vacation. A simple thing like going on vacation. I'm sure all of you here would have gone on a vacation somewhere, sometime. Especially those of you who go on vacations abroad. And when you choose the place you want to go to on vacation, it usually is a nice place. Either because you've been there before, somebody told you about it, or you've seen it on television, or you just heard the name of the place, but you want to go on vacation to a place that you regard as a nice place. And then some of you will go, and when you come back, you sing the praises of this place. The place so nice, the place so clean, the place have this, and the place have that. And the people who live there, you probably even envy them for living there because the place so nice. But of course, that doesn't happen by magic. Places that can be so described, and places that you aspire to go on vacation, or if you even want to live, and you might even have relatives living there abroad, those places are like that. Because certain things happen in their community that impact on the quality of life that you observe there and that you enjoy when you go there. But on the other hand, even though they come to visit us too and they might think that we too are nice, when we look at our situation, there are a significant number of shortcomings which can be improved if we handle our affairs differently. And that is what local government reform is holding out to you. That opportunity to handle our affairs differently. And the purpose behind that is to use our resources more effectively to improve the quality of life. And that improvement comes on a wide range of activities. Because you in the community here in Point Fortin and wherever else you live in Trinidad and I dare say Tobago, it is the objective of the central government, the government of the day, and it is the policy of Trinidad and Tobago that wherever you are within our borders, you should aspire to and participate in and receive the benefits as anybody else who live anywhere else in the country. So whether you live here in Point Fortin or in St. James or in Carnage or in Carapichaima, you should be able to aspire and enjoy a quality of life, the best quality of life that the country could afford to give to you. But that can only happen if we manage our affairs in an improved way. Because improved management should see an improved quality of life. I'm a member of Parliament for Diego Martin West, as you know. And I go to the constituency from time to time and sit in the office, and the constituents come to me to talk to me about issues affecting them where they live, in their street, next to their drain, where their shop is, but they have a problem of some kind. and they come to the MP office and they seek some kind of assistance or redress. And I would say 75% of the time that they come to the parliamentary office to see the member of parliament, to raise these issues that are affecting their lives, whether it's a rat infestation, garbage collection problems, mosquito infestation, broken pavement, grass growing too tall, and so on and so on. I would say 75% of those complaints are really issues that either belong to local government now or should quite properly belong to local government. And this will go on for year after year after year. But unless we change the system to allow those kinds of things to be properly dealt with, and persons whose job and responsibility it is to deal with them and be held accountable, then we're standing in the same place year after year after year. So what local government reform is doing now is moving towards a situation where we can quite properly put systems in place to make sure that the responsibilities that now fall to local government are better discharged, and responsibilities that may lie elsewhere with others be given to local government, and at the end of the day, this package of responsibility is properly discharged. And if that happens, you will see a dramatic improvement in the quality of your life. Mr. Khan mentioned devolution and the whole question of autonomy. But there's one other very important part of this three-legged stool. It is accountability. Somebody has to be responsible for everything that has to be done. And more importantly, the system has to be such that you, the burgess, you, the citizen, must be able to see and know who is responsible and accountable, and to so hold them accountable. And it's only when we get to that stage will you see the improvement I'm talking about. Mr. Khan mentioned a while ago that in Tobago the THA is viewed more seriously than the general election. That's true. And by the same token, the councillors who they elect into the THA, they are in a better position now to hold them accountable for their performance. And more importantly, if they are incompetent or corrupt, very quickly the people know and they will take action against them as appropriate. If you're corrupt, then you face the law. If you're incompetent, then you face the ballot box. Simple as that. But in Trinidad, the system is so murky that there's a tremendous distance and a great fog over who is responsible for what. I can tell you that. As an MP, someone will come to me and tell me, oh, there's a pothole or a broken pavement on so-and-so street. It's been there for a year and a half. And I went to the corporation office or to the CEO office, and I said, how many times you've been there? 4, 5, 6 times. Same result, no result. And of course, there are employees on the payroll. Nobody knows who they are, where they are, and what they're doing. All you know, if you don't pay them on Friday, bacchanal Friday evening. Because there's no accountability. And what is even worse, you are spending a lot of money because at the level of the parliament, allocation is made, and money is never enough for these things, as you know. So it's not a question of enough or not enough money, because there'll never be enough money. There's always something to do that needs more money. But whatever is allocated, you want to make sure that firstly, it is used for what it is allocated for. And secondly, it is used in the best way. And thirdly, it is not wasted deliberately or otherwise. So you have to have the kinds of systems in place that gives you an opportunity for persons to perform, to be seen to be performing, and to be held accountable for their performance. And the resources to do minor things, like cleaning the cemeteries, fixing a drain, fixing pavements, there never appears to be resources available when you need it. And secondly, the corporation itself gets its money by allocations coming to it, in tranches from the Ministry of Local Government. So the Ministry of Finance has the money. The Ministry of Finance gives it to local government, and local government gives it to a CEO, and a CEO will then pass it down into the system. By the time it changes all these hands and all these pockets, you lose control of who is responsible for what. And the easiest thing the CEO could tell you is that we haven't got any releases. You have absolutely no way of knowing if that is true. But that no releases is an excuse to cover a multitude of non-performance because you didn't get any releases. It might not even be true. And then the manager, whoever he or she might be, in charge of the workforce, might be spending half the time by the local restaurant or the local rum shop while the workers on the job, and if the manager isn't there, then why should the workers be there? And these might sound to you like petty things, but if you examine them in a proper study of how your resources are spent and how they effectively act for you, you will find that they are the difference between a good quality of life and a bad quality of life, because whatever little was given to you had not been made to work for you. And we are saying a proper local government system, as documented, arising out of our consultations, and with a will to make it work, and for you to allow yourself to participate in the process, that gives us a very good chance to change what has become moribund, which is year in, year out, doing the same thing and getting the same result. We believe that with this intervention and with the encouragement of bringing people on board where they can have their inputs, we can dramatically change what passes for local government without too much of a tremendous straining of our resources. Now, to give you the things we're saying local government will give you would require improvements and increase in some areas of the kinds of skill sets that are required. Because if I'm talking about accountability, you have to have persons in the system whose job it is to monitor properly. And the whole question of a culture of timely reporting must become an integral part of the process, because there's nothing to be gained and there's no improvement that you could measure if the report for this year's work doesn't get to those who are to monitor you until 5 years from today. And why is it that if you have staff whose job it is to monitor and to report on time, why are the reports always late? I'm sure that you know that reports from corporations, not necessarily Point Fortin, because you might be one of the better ones, but I've seen reports coming to the Parliament 5 years, 8 years, sometimes 10 years after the money was spent. So if we have a system where it's properly laid out, you have the proper skills in there, you need accounts clerks, you need accountants, you have managers, you have supervisors, and then they turn up for work and do the work, then the report should be there on time. And of course, when you do that, you can then take on more responsibility. Because what is going on now in Point Fortin Borough, whatever you're doing here and doing reasonably well, because I hear and I see that you get kudos from time to time for being one of the better managed boroughs in Trinidad. But there is more that you can do with an improved system, with an improved structure, with improved human resource involvement, and that autonomy that we're talking about, you can take on more responsibility. For example, you have health centers, you have schools, you have public buildings that may not be the corporation's buildings. You can take on the responsibility of ensuring that the maintenance and usage of those buildings fall under your management in such a way that those buildings are kept in good condition. Maintenance is an important part of your acceptance of responsibility for your new buildings and your heritage buildings. And as regards your playing fields and so on, You don't have to wait until the grass grows so tall that you could lose a cow in it. But if you cut it often enough, it becomes a lawn that will become the best playing field, and maybe the next crop of Monty Douglas and Wilfred Cave and Henry Cornby can appear again in Point Fortin. And of course, as you do that, you will ensure, because you have an interest in the matter and you have pride, and if there's competition, you will also want to win. And that pride of you being in charge of your own affairs and being seen to be doing it well for the rest of the borough, it is that pride that will drive you to do even better. There's no reason why, if you have schools in this area, that the maintenance and the small contracting arrangement should not be made to work for you. And I can tell you this, the PNM government is the only government that has made a statement and a practice of policy that says we will so conduct public contracting that 10% of government's business should be directed towards small contractors. That is a policy that, if it is carried out properly, has tremendous potential for spawning small business in the community, and of course, some of those small businesses can grow into medium-sized businesses and, I dare say, into large business. Maintenance area generate opportunities for small contracting. But it's not just building things, it's providing services. If we have the whole of Trinidad, we have 14 corporations. We have a lot of young people. Many of those young people want guidance. And one of the best areas of guidance is to guide them into sporting activities. And in sporting activities, if we have in the Ministry of Sport a template for competition, why can't we have inter-corporation competition that generates a kind of fervor where Point Fortin is competing against Penal de Bay, against Diego Martin, and we meet in the National Stadium once a year to have our regional games? But of course, if you organize that, it requires a certain amount of skill at the local level to look after the youngsters, to make sure that the physical structures are there for them and that they can go there safely and that they can be coached and so on. And all of that could be under the responsibility of the local authority. I was there in the cabinet when, in discussing our next leap into the management of sport, to generate more opportunities for young people who are participating in sport, and to create avenues for sportsmen and sportswomen to grow. And out of that discussion came something called the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago. And it was said then that what we have to do is to have this sports company. And this sports company will be charged with the responsibility of giving sportsmen and women all that they need, physically and otherwise, to become the best that they could be. Well, we've had the sports company, and many hundreds of millions of dollars later, the question has to be asked now. Is the sports company, this centralized national company, doing the best for the young people in sport in Trinidad and Tobago? What is the answer to that? The answer may very well be, it may very well be, that we have been spending the millions, but the original intention is not being realized. But on the other hand, it may be that if we reorganize our sport in a different way and give greater responsibility for sporting development at the level of the corporations, you may very well find that we get a better result. Again, excuse me, permit me to go back to Tobago. The best sporting facilities in any part of the country at the local level are in Tobago. And the best arrangement for looking after young people going into sport is in Tobago. And that is why, not Rio, but the time before Rio, because Rio was a disaster in some way, but before Rio, a little part of the country that has 65,000 people, and the rest of the country had 1.2 million or more. The largest contingent of our Olympic grouping came from Tobago. Did you all know that? Tobago had a larger component of participants in our Olympic brigade than anywhere else in the country, because whatever was going on in Tobago at the local level was able to nurture, identify, and produce those youngsters who ended up on the National Olympic team. What if that same kind of approach is broadened into Trinidad, and we spend our money differently and get that kind of result? Just think about it. Because we do spend a lot of money in Trinidad and Tobago, you know. And if you don't think we spend a lot of money here, find out what is spent in Barbados, in Jamaica, in Bahamas. Find out what they spend and see what they get for their expenditure in sport and maybe other things as well. And of course, as we look at these issues, see where we were and where we are today, we can come to the conclusion that we could be spending more and more money and getting less and less. Spending more and more money on education and getting less and less educated children. Spending more and more money on healthcare and getting less and less healthcare delivery, because it is not only about spending money. It is not what you do, what you spend, is what you do with the expenditure. And local government reform will allow us to do better with whatever is allocated to us. Your health center should, while it's part of the wider national health delivery plan, but what is wrong with the building itself being the responsibility of the local corporation to make sure that the building is always available in its best condition for the healthcare givers to use? Why do we have to wait for a clearance from the ministry in Port of Spain to tell you that the repairs can be done now and not when you wanted it done? Why? But you see, what I'm holding out to you here now is a willingness to give you all that you want to take onto yourself. Because others have offered local government reform to you. Let me give you an idea how it went before this offering from this government. In 2013, the local government elections were due. The PNM was in the opposition. And the government that was in office then brought to you reform. You know what the reform was? The reform was coming to the parliament the week before the deadline for the calling of the election, and coming to the parliament and proposing and enacting into law immediately a tinkering with the alderman system and introducing into local government proportional representation. We had not had that in our election system at all. It was talked about. But you go to parliament one day, the government came and said, we are introducing proportional representation to determine how aldermen should be allocated in local government. And that was their tremendous offering in local government reform. When they brought me my copy of the documentation that was going to be debated and enacted into law, it was literally hot off the press. It was just out of the photocopy machine and the paper was warm. And they used their majority and they enacted into law two things. One, that all persons who can be considered for aldermen must have their name put down on the list before the election. And secondly, if you have 10 people in the corporation, or let's say like here in Point Fortin, you have 6 persons as councillors in the corporation because you have 6 seats, you are allowed to put up only 6 names before the election. And after the election, regardless of what happens as the result may be, you can only choose 4 persons from that 6. Well, I don't know what the benefit is to confine Point Fortin to choose from your population, your alderman, from only 6 people. And let me tell you what has gone on there. It created a constraint on those who are making that decision. Because now, you put the names of 6 people there, and nobody else is being considered. But you know our people. You know our people. We feel a how very easily. So if I ask you, my dear lady, to put your name on the list because I think that you would be a good alderman in the borough, and you go in there with 5 other people, and of course they choose 4, and the other 2 who are not chosen, they feel hard done by. And of course, some might even get angry that my name was there before, and I'm a better person, and so on. You create discord. But they're saying to you, the benefit is that you put the names down there so that persons who want to be aldermen would be known to you. What's the benefit of that? All it does is creates confusion. Creates unnecessary confusion. And the PNM is considering removing that from the system. Because, you know, it wasn't genuinely any reform. What it was an attempt to use the existing arrangement to benefit a political party that thought that they might not have got any seats on a corporation. So at the time when they did that, they were afraid that they will get no seat in Diego Martin, no seat in Port of Spain, no seat in Arima, and so on. And the only way they could have got a seat was to change the law and allow, once they get some votes, that they'll get an alderman. But that wasn't the end of the devil. The devil was that the existing law says that once the corporation ends, and even before it ends, the minister controls local government and the minister controls the corporation. And if they had got 1 alderman in Diego Martin, the minister of that government would have controlled the Diego Martin corporation. And if they have got 1 alderman in Point Fortin, it was their intention that the minister would have controlled Point Fortin, even though the PNM had all the seats. That was the intention, you know. But we have no such intention, and therefore it looks very likely on consideration that we are going to repeal that piece of foolishness. Because what we want to do is to be able to get full participation. After the elections are known, most of you know that if you are asked to serve as an alderman when the results are known, you'll be more than likely to say, yes, I'm willing to serve, as against saying yes before the election and you don't know if they're going to win and who they're going to select. So it limits us to who you can choose. And therefore, we want to ensure that we get the fullest participation. You must understand your country. You must understand your people if you are putting systems in place and you want to get the best of those systems. But it didn't work, you know, because to get an alderman, they put a limit as to how much votes you should get. The law now says it's 25%. You've got to get 25% of the votes to qualify for an alderman. And of course, depending on how much votes you get, there's a mathematical formula now, and that will give you either 1 or 2 or 3, and they increased the number of aldermen. In Diego Martin, we now have 4. It used to be 3. That shenanigan gave us 1 more, because they felt that they will get that amount of votes even though they could win no seat, and they will get an alderman whom the minister will work through. Guess what? The people of the various corporations didn't give them enough votes to get even 1 alderman. So the PNM didn't get 3 aldermen, we got 4. So all 4 in Diego Martin, all 4 in Port of Spain, all 4 in Arima, so the system failed. The nefarious intention failed. And I'm sure on 28 November, when you come out to vote solidly for the PNM, Your existing arrangements would not allow them to get any alderman either because you don't want any part of that. But those are the kinds of games that some people play. But we are not about games. And as leader of the PNM, the one thing I can tell you here in Point Fortin and in Trinidad and Tobago is that once I am satisfied that change is for the better, I am not afraid to lead a charge for change. I distinctly recall when I mentioned and raised in certain quarters that there will be in this PNM, this venerable PNM, this Eric Williams party, there will be an attempt to introduce greater democracy by having one man, one vote. The experts inside the PNM and outside the PNM told me, you're crazy. You're going to mash up the PNM. And first the beginning, the PNM will never accept that. But the party could have been convinced. And the party was convinced. And today, in Trinidad and in Tobago, our elections are held on a one-man, one-vote basis. So don't be afraid of change. Embrace it. Get an intention within you to participate in it. Take on more responsibility. And if you do so with an intention to do good and to ensure that your community is properly developed, local government reform is for you. I have been to the consultations, 2 of the 14, and I've read the documentation from all of the others. I have seen no resistance of any kind coming from any quarter in Trinidad to the whole concept of local government reform. And that tells me that there's widespread support for the idea of moving one giant step further in taking our local governance to what we are outlining from a PNM platform. And we don't hold any monopoly on it. We are holding it out to the entire country. And there's nothing wrong with the UNC or the COP or the whoever P or the PY, whoever joining us and saying, let's have it here in Trinidad. It's for all of us, and the PNM is going to govern for all of us. Because I tell you something, you know, we are the PNM. And we don't mind having others join us as we progress the country. I had a good laugh the other day. I saw a press conference being held by my friend David Abdullah. And I always tell you all, I have tremendous respect for David Abdullah. He's a citizen who I quite admire. I mean, he likes political parties that are not the PNM, but as a citizen, I quite like David Abdullah. And I saw him at a press conference and he was very angry. Because you know, there's a joke in some quarters that says that a real thief will thief milk out of tea. Well, David was complaining that the UNC was running so true to form that he has a little MSJ and the UNC thief MSJ slogan. I mean, when dog learn to suck egg, is fowl egg, duck egg, geese egg, right? And David was very upset about this. To think that the UNC would steal the slogan, and the slogan is this: send a message to them. And you would think after all that the UNC had done, they wouldn't have done something like that. You take away the little, send a message from the little MSG. But what caused me to laugh is that David was upset that the UNC take away, send a message to them from him. But I wanted to ask David, where did you get that from? Send a message to them is Maurice Marshall's slogan that the PNM gave when we were fighting the NAR in 1987. In 1987, when we were in the opposition under 33-3, Maurice Marshall engaging the NAR that was rampant, and all, we couldn't win. We couldn't win, but we could fight them. And Maurice said, we know we can't beat them, but we want to send a message to them. And that was our campaign slogan from that election, that local election of 1987. So we are quite happy to have MSJ use it, but the UNC should not steal the thing from the MSJ. The Bible said, you know, unto him that hath more shall be given. And he that hath little, even the little he has shall be taken away from him. We don't have to prove that point here. Leave the little fellas with the PNM has no copyright to enforce. But you see, it is the PNM that sets the standard in the political arena in Trinidad and Tobago. And the message I want you to send to all of them is that now is the time for local government reform. Get on board. Now is the time for local government reform. I heard my colleague from Tabakit saying, in trying to find something, some way, some statement to negative our approach in advancing this to the people. He said that his big criticism of what we're doing here is that they were going to do it too. They were going to let local government collect and keep money, as we are saying now, that you collect the local taxes and you keep it in the corporation as your cash flow, your initial cash flow. It will not be your sum total of your finance, but you'll have a cash flow. And you will also make sure that who is liable for paying that tax, by tax is paid, because you have an interest in using it. And he said that, they were going to do that in the UNC, and I said, thank God. Because they might have gone with that too. So we expect that the vast majority of citizens will support the PNM's initiative. Yet another far-reaching PNM initiative. And we are so, in this 60th year, pleased to identify ourselves with this initiative because it's something we've always done. When we came under Dr. Williams' tutelage and said that we will have free secondary education in this country, it was a far-reaching offering to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, where people like my brothers, all 5 of them, could not have gone to high school because nobody came and offered them that initiative. But I was caught by it. Dr. Williams offered it, and it caught me. And that singular initiative of free secondary education changed my life and the life of tens of thousands of people in Trinidad and Tobago. I was reading an article written by Selwyn Kojo this week about an indentured East Indian worker on a plantation in central Trinidad, south central Trinidad, who got himself infected by something called jigger. I don't know if any of you here know what jigger is. Oh yeah? But he got himself infected by jigger, and it created a sore in his foot to the point where he could not report for work. And he was staying in the little hut that he lived in. And the estate owner refused to allow him his ration, his food. And he stayed there and starved to death because he could not come to work on the estate. Go and look at the papers this week. Named person, named estate, named time part of our history in this country. People were dying from jigger and turbo and hookworm and all those kinds of things. But then a PNM government came in 1956 and said that local health care and national health care is a priority, and since then the quality of life, you don't take it for granted. Nowadays we take for granted, you go to the hospital, you want MRI, you want RIM, you want CAT, you want DRG, everything there. As a right, as an entitlement. That's where we came from. Those are the changes we made. Those are the changes we made, and those changes were made by the PNM. My friend passed away recently. He chose a woman from down in Guayari, but he had to cross the river on the east coast to go to see her. And it was a bridge with a chain they used to have to pull back and forth. And you could imagine he come there to go by the woman and the chain bust, the bridge can't come. You understand? That's where we came from, because under the PNM, we set about to make these initiatives, and today you could travel all over this country, building new bridges, improving bridges, but being able to show progress. In every area, you can see progress in Trinidad and Tobago. Invariably, you'll find that that progress was initiated, driven, executed, and sustained by the PNM. Right here in La Brea, Point Fortin area, we wanted to do something for you here. As I was coming down here, I heard Mr. Franklin Khan mentioning to you the PNM initiative of Labidco Estate. Let me remind you about Labidco in case you forget, and don't make me out and don't make us out as the PNM. When we built the Labidco Estate, to bring that industry into this area, to alleviate poverty, to grow the industry not only for you, but for the national community, we lost the election immediately after. And guess what? The UNC came into office and left La Brea Estate there untouched for 5 years. Untouched. But you intervened again and put the PNM back in the government. And the PNM went back to where we came from, and we completed that industrial estate and put it to work. That's how it went. Left to them alone, you would never have had Labidco Estate here. Simply because what? Because you have over the decades supported the best political party in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And for that, you make no apology. Point Fortin is PNM, and PNM is Point Fortin. No apology to anybody for that. You take the best and ignore the rest. And you think they're finished with that? After they saw what happened, after they saw what happened with Labidco, they did the same thing with aluminum smelter. The people of La Brea and you here in Point Fortin, this part of the country where the smelter was supposed to go, you voted for it. But the PNM didn't win the election. So you know what they did? The very first thing they did was to shut down the aluminum smelter. I was looking at a document recently in this government's intention to restart an aluminum business in Wallafield to make motorcar wheels. And when I looked, I saw 3 or 4 countries that went into that business after Trinidad and Tobago. And guess what? Their business is booming and expanding, and they're selling alloy wheels to the motor industry of the world and earning foreign exchange. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, Anil Roberts, and a handful of misguided people denied Trinidad and Tobago the opportunity of doing that before. Happened so. But when they shut down the aluminum smelter, we were in the opposition. I asked the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago what are the consequences, the financial consequences of that action of your government. She never answered. She wouldn't answer. Minister of Finance wouldn't answer. Minister of Energy wouldn't answer. From a public platform, after she went and came back from China, I asked her, Madam Prime Minister, you went to China. Did this matter of the smelter come up, and what are the arrangements in place for dealing with your actions of shutting down the smelter? She never answered. So tonight, none of you here in Point Fortin in this audience, none of you at home listening to me know what is the situation with respect to the shutting down of the aluminum smelter. All you know is that somebody told you it would have killed people in La Brea or Point Fortin, and it was shut down, and end the story. But it don't go so at all, because that smelter was a contract between the government of Trinidad and Tobago and a Chinese company owned by the government of China. So when you take it upon yourself to play politics and have Anil Ballin, what? And shut it down, and I ask you, what is the outcome, and you don't answer. Now, I can tell you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that there are serious consequences for that shutdown. Because one of the first things I had to deal with when I came in as Prime Minister is a Chinese company producing to me a claim for 200 million US dollars. And that is what your government is now dealing with, trying to back it away down to as minimum. But what is worse, we had our priorities, we did other things before we started dealing with that. We are now on that situation. The company has now come to Trinidad. They met with the Minister of Finance yesterday, and they outlined in detail all that has happened from the day they got involved with the project until now that they're making this claim. And what is shocking about it is the fact that in between, all the time that I was talking to the UNC government and asking the Prime Minister and speaking to her as opposition leader to tell the country what is the story, they were there doing things and saying nothing about it. It's not to say they shut it down and turn away, you know. They were actually engaging the company, engaging the issue, creating liabilities for us, offering to do this, not doing it, putting people from here, sending people to China. Would you believe that all this time the company was still running? And that government led by Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar was absolutely silent. Silent as a grave on a matter like this. But we now have to discharge serious liability for possible millions of US dollars because the government of the day wanted to spite the PNM and to spite you here in Labre and in Point Fortin and shut down a business that could have diversified our economy. That is a fact. What I just told you there is a fact. And as a matter of fact, next week, whenever the Parliament meets again, I am going to lay this matter out in the Parliament for the parliamentary record for all times, so the people of this country could see. When a PNM comes to you, when the PNM comes to you, and they take us for granted, the alternative is something like that. We are different. Our record is different, and we are always for all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why Point Lisas exists in central Trinidad, where we can't win a seat. But every time we do something in this part, unfortunately for you in this part, you get that kind of foolishness. But if any opportunity arises for us to import aluminum ingots, not smelting bauxite, but importing aluminum ingots, if the opportunity arises and the economics look good, this PNM government will go back to that business once the numbers are right. And it's against that background that I've put a committee in place and restart the board of Alutech to do just that. So stand by to hear if we are going down that road once the numbers and the analyses are good. Because when you talk about diversifying the economy, aluminum wheel is not oil and gas. It's not pumpkin and tomato. It's a different thing. And what we need to do in this country is to do all that we can do, every single thing, to expand our economy. And what we do have in Trinidad and Tobago now is a tremendous investment in electricity. And we use our gas to generate electricity. And if we use that electricity to industrialize away from iron and steel, away from ammonia, we are diversifying. That is what diversification is, giving yourself more products to sell in the international marketplace. Giving yourself an opportunity to sell something that can earn hard currency. And that is what this government is going to be doing. Because you see, we know that this country depends on good governance for doing the best that we can do as a people. And we know that we are held to a higher standard. We are held to a higher standard. And that is why the PNM does better than any other political party in Trinidad and Tobago. If we had done half of the things that the last government did, half of you wouldn't be here tonight because you'll want to have nothing to do with us. But you know that you can always experiment with others, and then you find yourself back home to the PNM. And that's why tonight, on the question of local government reform, I'm appealing to you all, not just as PNM supporters here in Point Fortin, but appealing to every right-thinking citizen to come out and vote. Cast your vote for a PNM candidate. Cast your vote for a PNM policy and program. A program that wasn't a VAPS that came to the Parliament one Friday evening to win an alderman seat. A program that came by way of us in the opposition sitting down and thinking what we will do when we get back into government, because we always knew that with your support, the next government would have been a PNM government. And in our manifesto, we identified local government reform as one of those major initiatives that could improve the quality of life of the people of Trinidad. And as we did so, as we won the election, we immediately, in the face of all kinds of priorities, in the 12-month period that has passed, we have started the process and we have made great progress. We have completed the whole nationwide consultation. We have completed the analysis of all that you've said to us. And we are now very advanced in drafting the legislation on the way to the Parliament. So you vote for a PNM candidate and you're voting to support this program. You are voting to support this progress. And as we do that, you can do so knowing that it's a program that creates opportunities. The young ones that we are training now is to put their skills to work in new systems to bring about that improvement in quality of life. Holding people accountable is something that this country requires. And of course, at the end of the day, we take a pride in our liberty. That liberty to manage your affairs at the local level will bring a pride and put a spring in your step here in Point Fortin. So tonight, it falls to me to present to you 6 of your best. For the electoral district of Tisha Guapo, I present to you the venerable, experienced Abdon Mason. For the electoral district of Mahaika Newland, I present to you the well-known, the successful, the experienced Reynold Carrington. And from a land well-known to you, the land of Egypt, I give you Kwesi Thomas. And for those of you in New Village, your candidate is Leslie Pascal. And for Hollywood, we give you the man who flies high, flies often, a man that you're all very proud of, a man with a long tradition in local government. We give you Kennedy Richards. And the new baby of the team, for Captiville, we give you Brianna Jones. Point Fortin, in 2016, they've given us your best. Ignore the rest. Give us all 6 seats. Give us all the votes, because you can trust the PNM to do what is best for Point Fortin. So once again, as local government step on us, take local government seriously. I know some of you have a habit of saying it's only local government, but I'm not going to vote. Well, by not voting, you are indicating a lack of interest. And the one thing that will cause this local government reform exercise to not deliver as I am promising is if you, the people, don't get involved and show an interest and increase your participation. So come out and vote. Local government is important. November 28th, come out and vote for the PNM candidate. And on the night of November 28th, I want to stay in Diego Martin where I'll be. And I'll shout to you, great is the PNM. And you say, great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. And Point Fortin has children. That's not the ambition. Development everywhere. But I'm on the streets here.